we are going to talk about Donovan Mitchell and whether he should be in the MVP conversation. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the MVP criteria is always changing. There's a different criteria for the MVP every single year. For many years, it's always been the best player on the best team is the MVP. That's why Steve Nash won 2 MVPs, because he didn't have the best statistics, but he was on one of the best teams. If we're going by that criteria, there are 4 players that should be in the conversation.
We should make a pick a side MVP.
Yeah, there are 4 players that should be in the conversation. James Harden, Joel Embiid, Donovan Mitchell, and Devin Booker. If we're going by the best player on the best teams, those 4 players should be in the MVP conversation.
Where's Giannis?
I'm talking. If you look at the top teams, Brooklyn's 1, the 1 seed. Sixers are the 2nd seed.
Okay.
Jazz are the 1st seed, and the Suns are the 2nd seed.
I don't think it should be that cut and dry, though.
But for the most part, it has been for the last couple of years.
I mean, when was the last time we had a real MVP?
James Harden.
That was so Giannis last year wasn't a real MVP?
Nah, Harden should have won it.
No, you said the year before Harden.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you. You just
No, yeah, I said Giannis, but this is what I'm saying. The criteria feels, especially this year, we're really going to know how they're going to vote on this MVP because Nikola Jokic, I think, is having the best statistical season in the NBA. But they are not winning as much as a Utah, as a Phoenix, as a Brooklyn, or Philly. Embiid would be the front runner if he didn't have his injury. So would LeBron. He would be in the conversation. So right now, the MVP is wide open. And in my opinion, I think Donovan Mitchell deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, neither Mitchell nor Booker have been in the conversation all year. Booker hasn't because the Suns just started to really ascend and lock into that 2nd seed. But Utah, you have not heard anybody mention Mitchell in the MVP conversation. I don't think Embiid is going to win because of his injuries. Harden won't win because he's injured now and because it's Brooklyn. Yeah. So they're going to hold that against him, and they shouldn't because he should be MVP cut and dry this season. And then the next guy it leaves is Donovan Mitchell. So for me, I mean, I think Mitchell should be in the MVP conversation, and I think the fact that he's not getting talked about enough is kind of ridiculous when it comes to MVP.
I don't think Booker should be in the conversation. I think Chris Paul should be more in the conversation than Booker. That's just me, though.
You were the same guy that said Booker should have made the All-Star game over CP3, though.
I did. Anyways, All-Star games is completely different than an MVP. But anyways, like I was saying, yeah, you're right. The criteria has definitely changed in the past couple of years. It flip-flops either way because if we're talking about the most valuable players should be LeBron 9 times out of 10, or, of course, Steph Curry. Duh. But in terms of best player on the best teams, you're right. Donovan Mitchell has to be up there. Harden's not going to – he's hurt now. He's not going to get the credit. The Joker, his team hasn't been playing good, although they're surging up. They're 7-0, so they're surging up. So maybe I feel like right now with everybody being injured, the list, in my opinion, comes down to the Joker, Dame, Donovan Mitchell. I think those are the 3 guys. I think Dame and Joker have been dominating longer than Donovan. I think Donovan has been consistently great all year, but I think Dame and Joker has more flashy, highlight reel performances where they've just been dominant, especially when their team, Dame, you see when his team went down with all those injuries, he was putting on James Harden performances. So I think that's great. I think those 3 guys right now should be the front runners just based off the injuries. I mean, Embiid just came back, so we'll see if he can catch up. But you're right, the criteria has changed, and it's different. And I think the NBA should make a better job of explaining the MVP or what's the meaning because, in my opinion, I don't think even – I love Steph Curry, but his team's 10th seed. He's top 10 MVP. I don't think he should get a vote over Donovan Mitchell. He's the best player on one of the best – well, he's the best player on the team that's been the best team in the league all year. I think he should definitely be in the top 5. I don't think guys who have their team under 8 seed should even be in the voting, but they've been in the top 5, so the MVP race is definitely different. But I think Donovan Mitchell does deserve some love.
Yeah, well, I think that Donovan Mitchell should definitely be in the conversation, first of all. But the one thing I would say is I think winning should play a factor. Like you said, I don't think Steph Curry with a 10-seeded team right now should be in the conversation. But I don't think that should automatically mean that like you look at the best team and their best player automatically has to be like the MVP frontrunner. I think we got to look at like a bunch of different things, and that's why for me, Jokic is the guy right now that I would pinpoint as my MVP. Just because even though they're the 4th seed, they're still 33-18. They're right there on the tail of the Utah Jazz. It's not like they're a middle of the pack team. They're one of the best teams in the West, and Jokic plays such a huge part of that. He is. You could look at the advanced numbers, you could look at the traditional stats, or just watch them play and see the impact that he has. To me, he's the MVP cut and dry. I think it's helped with injuries. Embiid, LeBron, even James Harden would give strong cases against him, but I think because of the injuries, to me, Jokic is the MVP right now. I don't think it's like, I don't have anybody that I would put right up with him. I think he's the guy for me right now, but I do think Donovan Mitchell should be in that conversation. I think that Devin Booker is creeping into that conversation, but the Suns got to keep doing what they've been doing. I think they've really hit their stride over the second half after a little bit of a slow start. But I agree with you. I think that Donovan Mitchell has been disrespected in the MVP race this year.
Yeah, I have Nikola Jokic as my MVP right now because, I mean, it's just hard to ignore the season that he's been having. But the reason why I don't think Mitchell is getting talked about is because the Jazz are so good that it's hurting him. The reason I say it is because they have such a balanced attack. They have so many players that excel at different roles that even though Mitchell, you would say, is the best player on the Jazz, you question whether he's the most impactful because Rudy Gobert is number 2 in win shares in the entire NBA, only behind Nikola Jokic. And while Mitchell is the face of the Jazz, is he the most impactful? Is he really their most important player? Is he really their most valuable player? And that's leading into this other question. If it's not Mitchell, would you give any consideration to Rudy Gobert for MVP or none at all?
I wouldn't personally. I would definitely.
No, that's just funny how Rudy Gobert MVP.
I would definitely give consideration to Donovan Mitchell over Rudy Gobert.
I would too.
I think if you know, like you can look at the numbers. And the numbers could probably tell you differently. I just think if you watch the game, like you watch how Utah plays, Rudy Gobert definitely deserves some love because if you legit sit there and watch a Utah Jazz game, you can see the impact he makes. And I think what people mistake his impact is because they think offense is the only thing that matters. And I think that's what's always going to hurt Rudy Gobert. He's not one of those guys who's going to score a lot of buckets in a fancy way or even score a lot of buckets in a regular way. But I think defensively his impact is so. I think he reminds me of, honestly, a Joakim Noah back when our Bulls, his defensive impact is so huge for that team. He is the reason why they are the number 1 seed. He's been
and Noah was in the top 5 in MVP.
Exactly. And he only averaged like 13 and 12. So it's like Gobert. I really honestly think they're not getting talked about enough because nobody likes them. I think nobody likes you. You can even see it in an All-Star game when those 2 guys are the last 2 guys picked. I don't think nobody respects Utah enough. I think that's a credit to their fans. Nobody likes Utah fans. I think that's a credit to the fact that Rudy Gobert is one of the reasons why COVID got into the NBA. People don't really like him too much about that. And I think that team just doesn't get a lot of love in the MVP race because people don't respect them enough in the league.
And who's the player that is always going at Utah Jazz fans?
Westbrook.
What's his name? Full name?
Russell Westbrook?
No, not him. It's an old time player, bro.
I know who you're talking about. Vernon Maxwell.
Vernon Maxwell.
That's what it is.
He's always talking about Utah Jazz fans on Twitter.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's just the way the team is constructed. And you make a good point, but I think more so it's the way the team's constructed because Gobert has such an impact with the defense, because Jordan Clarkson is going to be the runaway 6th man of the year. They have such a nice, well-rounded team that, like, I don't think Donovan Mitchell could ever be to the Jazz what Jokic has been to the Nuggets this year, or Giannis was to the Bucks last year, or what LeBron was to those Cavs teams, what Harden was to the Rockets. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's never going to be a Donovan Mitchell carry job because the Jazz are a very good organization. They're really well coached. They're a great all-around three-point shooting, defending team. They have the 6th man of the year. They have probably the defensive player of the year, if not the runner-up in that category. So it's hard to measure his impact against Jokic, who I think does much more for the Nuggets.
Can I ask a question? Why does Kawhi get love and Donovan doesn't?
Because Kawhi is more of a household name.
Exactly.
Yeah, because if they be realistically, Clippers are just kind of the same in terms of a balanced attack. So I feel like that's why I feel like it really comes down to like nobody just doesn't respect Utah. Like nobody likes, because Donovan Mitchell and Kawhi Leonard, we could all agree, have around the same impact on the team in the sense of
I don't think so.
well, I mean, in the sense of like they're the best player on their team. Their team is one of the best teams in the West.
I think Kawhi being so elite defensively kind of gives them the edge. But if you look at the raw numbers, and
I'm
how
just
they're
talking about
playing,
just raw numbers.
It is similar.
Like it's
season.
close.
So if in the MVP, that's why I know Kawhi is over Donovan Mitchell in the MVP conversation, which I don't know why. I think Mitchell should be over him because he's the best player on the best team in the NBA. But overall, I think Mitchell should be in the conversation, and it's gonna be. I want to see who wins the award because
It should be the Joker.
Who wins the award?
But Embiid back, so we'll see.
Who wins the award is going to tell a lot about how they are changing their criteria year after year. It feels like every year they're changing it.
That's it, because there's no defined way for how they determine MVP. You get what I'm saying? Like every year it could be something different.
It feels like there is a defined way though.
Think so?
Yeah.
But I don't know about that. Like you look back at the Derrick Rose year, the year that Derrick Rose won MVP, and
Say something dumb.
This is not
best player on the best team.
Exactly.
He's also the most impactful guy on the best team.
No, LeBron was more impactful than Miami that year.
We was missing four of our best guys for the majority of the season.
LeBron was better though.
LeBron had D Wade and Chris Bosh all the time. Joakim Noah missed time, Boozer missed time. Yeah, I didn't even know that. Joakim Noah missed time, Boozer missed time.
I remember because I remember the case. I've had this argument.
What? You just got? What did you say?
Keith Bogus was a good.
He was horrible.
This is what I'm gonna say. I think the player who changed the criteria a little bit was Westbrook when he won the MVP, while his team being bad but averaging a triple double.
It's because he made history. It's different,
and it was polarizing.
But he's been making history for the last couple of years, and he's not even in the conversation.
I think the Joker should get it because he's about to make history as a center.
I mean, you want to talk storylines though? That was like the OG storyline MVP. I would say, like more than any prior. Kevin Durant left, everybody was watching Russell Westbrook to see how he would respond, and he came out and put up those historic numbers. So it was a combination of those two things. It was just too polarizing.
He led the league in scoring that year too, right?
And he led him to the playoffs, and if I'm not mistaken,
lost in 5.
Yeah, but all those games were close. Like he impacted that team for sure. I don't know if he was the most valuable player that year, but it was a combination of all those things. And now I feel like the award has become so many different factors now. So it's such a hard thing to judge because you don't know how every voter for the MVP is looking at the award in a different way.